Freestyle. This is the most commonly swum stroke in competitive swimming and the one most people learn first when they begin training seriously. Despite its name, freestyle refers specifically to the front crawl technique in race settings, since swimmers almost universally choose it as the fastest and most efficient option when given free choice. The swimmer lies face down in the water with the body positioned as flat and horizontal as possible to reduce drag. The arms move in an alternating windmill motion, one pulling through the water beneath the body while the other recovers above the surface. The legs perform a continuous flutter kick, moving up and down in a tight, rapid rhythm from the hips rather than the knees. Breathing is done by rotating the head to one side during the arm recovery, then returning the face to the water immediately after inhaling.
Backstroke. This is the only competitive swimming stroke performed entirely on the back, which means the swimmer faces upward toward the ceiling or sky throughout the entire length of the pool. Because the face remains out of the water at all times, breathing is significantly easier than in other strokes, making it a common recommendation for swimmers with breathing difficulties or anxiety in the water. The arms move in an alternating windmill pattern, similar to freestyle, but in reverse, with each arm entering the water above the head and pulling downward through the water alongside the body. The legs perform the same flutter kick as in freestyle, driving upward rather than downward given the inverted body position. The primary challenge of backstroke is navigation, since the swimmer cannot see where they are going and must rely on ceiling markers and stroke counting to judge their position in the pool.
Breaststroke. This is widely considered the oldest swimming stroke in recorded history, with references to a frog-like swimming motion appearing in ancient Egyptian cave drawings and European manuscripts dating back centuries. The swimmer faces downward in the water and moves both arms simultaneously in a sweeping outward and then inward pulling motion that draws the hands from in front of the head down to the chest in a circular arc. The leg movement, called the whip kick or frog kick, mirrors this symmetry, with both legs drawing up toward the body and then thrusting outward and together in a powerful propulsive motion that resembles a frog swimming. Breaststroke is the slowest of the four competitive strokes, but requires significant technical precision and coordination to perform correctly.
Butterfly. This is widely regarded as the most physically demanding and technically difficult stroke in competitive swimming. It was developed in the 1930s as a variation of breaststroke and was eventually recognized as a separate stroke in competition in 1952. The swimmer faces downward and moves both arms simultaneously in a large sweeping motion, swinging them forward above the water surface and then driving them downward and back through the water beneath the body. The leg movement is called the Dolphin kick, where both legs press together and move up and down in a fluid, undulating wave motion that travels from the hips through to the feet. The entire body produces a rhythmic, wave-like movement from head to toe with each stroke cycle, which gives the swimmer its characteristic surging, undulating appearance in the water.
Sidestroke. This is a stroke swum on one side of the body, rather than face down or face up, and it has largely disappeared from competitive swimming, but remains important in life-saving and recreational contexts. The swimmer lies on their side in the water, with one ear submerged and the other facing upward, keeping the body in a long lateral position. The lower arm pulls through the water toward the feet, while the upper arm reaches forward and then pulls back in a scissor-like motion. The legs perform a scissor kick, where one leg sweeps forward and the other sweeps backward before snapping together to generate propulsion. Because the face stays naturally above the water surface throughout, the side stroke is used extensively by lifeguards when towing a rescued swimmer to safety, as it keeps both the rescuer and the victim's heads above water. Elementary backstroke. This is a simplified and relaxed version of the standard backstroke and is one of the first strokes taught to beginner swimmers because of how naturally it accommodates breathing and body position.
The swimmer floats on their back with the face continuously above water, removing any breathing coordination challenge entirely. The arm movement is simple and symmetrical, with both arms sliding outward from the sides of the body, then sweeping downward and back to the sides in a smooth gliding motion that resembles the wings of a bird. The legs perform a whip kick, similar to breaststroke, drawing up and then thrusting outward and together to generate forward movement. The stroke is slow and restful by design, making it useful for conserving energy over long distances or during survival situations in open water.
Trudgen. This stroke represents an important historical step in the development of modern competitive swimming. It was introduced to Europe in the 1870s by British swimmer John Trudgen, who had observed indigenous swimmers in South America using an overarm technique that was far faster than the breaststroke then common in European competition. The Trudgen uses an alternating overarm recovery above the water, similar to what would later evolve into the modern freestyle crawl, but pairs it with a scissor kick rather than the flutter kick. Each full arm cycle is accompanied by one scissor kick of the legs, which creates a somewhat choppy, lunging rhythm in the water. While it is rarely used today in competitive swimming, it is recognized as a direct ancestor of the modern freestyle stroke and marked the beginning of a fundamental shift in how swimmers approached speed in the water.
Combat Sidestroke. This stroke was specifically developed and refined by the United States Navy SEALs for use in military swimming operations. It was designed to be highly efficient over long distances while keeping the swimmer's profile low and difficult to detect on the surface of the water. The combat sidestroke borrows elements from several existing strokes, combining a modified sidestroke arm pull with a flutter kick and a timing pattern that minimizes splashing and visual exposure above the waterline. Swimmers in military selection programs, such as BUDS training, are required to cover significant distances using this stroke while wearing fins. The stroke prioritizes energy conservation and stealth over raw speed, reflecting the real-world operational demands placed on combat swimmers working in open ocean or coastal environments.
Underwater dolphin kick. This is technically not a full stroke in the traditional sense, but is one of the most powerful and fastest forms of propulsion available to competitive swimmers, and is now considered a critical technical skill in elite-level racing. The swimmer is fully submerged beneath the surface and moves the entire body in a continuous wave-like undulation driven from the core and hips, with the legs pressed tightly together and the feet driving the motion to its tip. The dolphin kick underwater produces less drag than any stroke performed at the surface because the swimmer avoids the turbulence and resistance created by wave drag at the waterline. Competitive swimmers are permitted to use the underwater dolphin kick for up to 15 meters after each start and turn, and elite swimmers spend significant portions of their training developing this skill.
Survival float. This technique is less a stroke and more a fundamental water survival skill that is taught to swimmers of all ages and abilities, particularly in open water safety programs. The swimmer takes a deep breath and allows the body to float face down near the surface in a relaxed, spread position, conserving energy completely during this passive phase. When the need to breathe arrives, the swimmer gently lifts the head and presses the arms and legs downward in a slow, controlled motion to raise the face briefly above the surface, inhales, and then returns to the resting float position. The entire purpose of the survival float is to extend the amount of time a person can remain afloat in open water with minimal energy expenditure, making it potentially life-saving in situations where a swimmer is stranded far from shore and rescue may take considerable time to arrive.